Okay, we're back with another podcast for Redscroll. I'm Rick.
I'm Josh.
And we're here with Rich Martin of the Telegraph.
I'm Rich. Hello.
There he is.
That's me.
So we're going to start off with what we're listening to. I'll start off. We've got a few new things and a lot of old things because, as Josh and I were discussing earlier, it's that time of year where not a lot of new stuff comes out. So one of the new things I'm listening to actually came out last year. It's more of a catch-up thing. It's the O/H, which I guess stands for Ontario Hospital. But if you were to look it up, it's just O/H. Market Values is the LP. It's on the Long Island Electrical System label, Lies. It's Rich Oddie of Orphix and Dave Foster of Huron doing some... this is more aggressive than Orphix might be thought to be, and maybe right in line with what you might think of Huron if you're familiar with his stuff on the Zark label. And if you're not, it's just aggressive electronics, and on this one, they're kind of scream talking. One of them is just about, it's kind of inane topics. It's kind of funny. Like, the album's called Market Values, and they talk about stocks and stuff. And it's kind of ridiculous. It sounds terrible. It's great.
Okay. I'll check it out.
And then there's that Space Camp record. Seen Space Camp a couple times recently, and they're great. And they put out that Force Femmed record on Howling Frequency, which is Western Mass label. They also put out that.
That is not the new one. They have
a tape.
They have a tape that is a newer recording. But yeah,
also listening to that.
Also listening to that. Well, I'm just trying to put it in perspective about current versus not current.
Right.
But great band.
Yep.
Very excited to see what else they do.
Yep. And then the Kamal Williams, which just came out. When you're listening to this, it'll be a couple weeks ago. And when I'm recording this, it'll be in a couple days. It's the New Heights / Snitches Brew 12-inch on Black Focus Records, which they also put out the Mansur Brown record that came out late last year, and he is on this record with Kamal as well. And it's great. And then besides that, a lot of classics. XTC, Flock of Seagulls, New Order / Joy Division, which inexplicably put out a best of New Order / Joy Division recently.
Yes, but that's like a reissue too, right? I think that's a reissue.
Is that a combo of the two substances?
It's called Total.
Yeah,
like basically the first side of the two LPs is Joy Division, and the other three sides are New Order.
That's real honky. I don't like that.
Strange.
It's weird. I don't know.
Though their live sets have been, delving into that material a lot. It makes sense to bring it together.
There's plenty of greatest hits.
Josh and I are going to see Peter Hook next year.
Nice.
Yeah,
We've seen him before too. It's great.
It's not until November or October.
It's like a year away, basically.
Yeah,
it's so far away.
But
we already have tickets.
A few years ago, I saw the touring New Order, and I saw Peter Hook in the same year, and he blew them away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right.
It's a way.
Because that New Order show is one of the best of theirs I've seen. I mean, they had some bad tours. They weren't the greatest live band, and I thought they were kind of pulling it together even without Hookie. Hookie's the main thing, though. So
I mean,
he played
also
for
just
3 hours.
Really.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's also the fact that he's playing, the classic material. He's not playing, the newer 4 albums.
For the most part, that's what they did, too.
It's true, but he's just doing, full albums through, and then some extra material at the end. But it's great. And also the fact that it's Peter Hook's name doesn't draw in like New Order does, so he's playing in clubs as opposed to, larger venues.
Well, packed clubs.
Packed clubs, still. Yeah. Anyway, what do you listen to, Josh?
Off the top, that Mansur Brown Shiroi that you mentioned earlier, it's light jazz funk, which I think is great for the early mornings before you get too heavy. The the Manu Mokhtar Blue Stage session on Third Man that just came out, which I didn't realize was coming out until I opened the box, and that was fun.
Nice.
In sort of the same vein, not to put this in the same, like, too much of the same box, but the Tomacrest. I don't know if you're familiar. It's on Glitterbeat. The last record came out in 2017. It's called Kadal, and it's a Tuareg group from Algeria, and I think they have 4 albums out, and I've been listening to those pretty heavy. That Laurie Spiegel Unseen Worlds reissue from 1991 that just got a reissue on the Unseen Worlds label. I grabbed that the other day. The band Forn, Rights of Despair, doom sludgy stuff, semi-local Boston, on Gilead Media.
We are on the street. We're recording right on the street.
Basically.
Monster trucks.
Yeah.
Basically. And that's pretty much it for like things that weren't already in my my box.
How about you, Rich?
Got a few things. I'm still playing catch up too, but and I'm still stuck on a few things from last year. Low, Double Negative, really digging that. Took me a while to get into it, but it's just setting the right tone right now. Spiritualize and Nothing Hurt. I just keep going back to that over and over again. It's probably my favorite record from last year. New Deer Hunter's pretty fabulous. It's a little soft and airy, but it's got some real estate in there. Kind of, I don't know, pretty guitar stuff. But doing that, and then new William Tyler Goes West. Cool instrumental guitar work. I think that's on Merge. I keep going back to the Kamasi Washington, Heaven and Earth. I don't think I'm going to get to the bottom of that anytime soon.
That's a great record.
Yeah, great record. And I've been trying to dig through the Earl Sweatshirt stuff just because the new record coming out, some rap songs. I think that's out maybe tomorrow. Yeah, that's pretty it. The Bowie Glastonbury Live 2000 that came out just a month or so ago is, I think, like a peak period for him, sort of redefining himself for the last run, and he's in fine form and just really tapping into like the broad spectrum of his catalog. So pretty cool collection. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice. Cool.
That's what I got.
You were prepared.
XTC. Yeah. What XTC were you listening to?
Yeah, I just throw it on. Sometimes I'll go right through the years, just be like white music, etc., and then
I'm English Settlement almost every time now.
Really?
Yeah, that's my new go-to for them. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go with the oranges and lemons.
Oh yeah, a little more psychedelic.
Yeah. Anyway.
Studio.
What I don't do is Dukes of the Stratosphere.
No?
That's where I draw my imaginary line.
I do not have a line there. I enjoy that very much.
Yeah. And not to say I don't think it's good. I just don't enjoy it as much as XTC. Yeah. So, Rich, you run a store in New London, which is how we most relate to you, I guess. Probably. As a store in Wallingford, right. And
wearing our town colors here. No.
Yeah. But let's just go back to let's dig into your personal history. What made you get into music in the first place?
My dad was a jazz drummer, so I always had music around me. I remember being really young and just helping him carry his equipment into gigs, and I thought that was cool. Dug it and dug the music, and I think it started there. I started putting bands together in junior high school, mostly just sort of sonic exploratory stuff, but I had some instruments around the house, and my friends would come over and we'd start jamming, and that led to having bands, and which led to releasing stuff, which led to shows, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's been part of my life for a long time. So.
And was the Grand Passion, was that the first?
My first band was actually called Skimbleshanks. That was in high school.
Did that release anything?
Just like tapes and stuff that we brought to, WCNI, the local radio station. But yeah, nothing for real. I mean, we released enough stuff that way that we got noticed and were able to get shows at places like Populous Pudding up in Willimantic and, the LNG Club and places like that. But that was, that was a long time. The first real band, I would say, was Grand Passion, because we actually toured a little bit and hit other cities and released some stuff. So got a little bit of notoriety out there.
And then, so were you in Mystic at that time?
Yeah, I grew up in Mystic. I lived there through my high school years, and which got into the Grand Passion era, and then we were playing a lot of shows and touring, and I resettled in New London and opened a space over there with the guys in the band called Temporary Autonomous Zone. We put on art shows and plays, and then of course rock shows and other related stuff. So.
And word has it you had some brushes with early bookings before people really blew up in that spot.
Yeah, I mean it was a space probably smaller than the little area we're sitting in here. I'm gesturing and making a very small space with my hands. But
let's say it's about a third of the store.
Yeah, it's it was basically a living room space, but somehow we got on the right radar. I early on I reached out to try to book Bevis Fran, because I heard they were coming over and doing a stateside tour, and I was a huge fan of the music, and that got me in touch with a booking agent named Kathy Haar, who happened to represent a lot of the Elephant Six bands, and as well as Bright Eyes. So I got Elf Power in early, and then of course Bright Eyes came in, and they did their first few tours in that space. They came through, and I mean at that point it was Tim Kasher from Cursive and Connor Oberst and I'm gonna forget his name from Sun Ambulance. There's another Saddle Creek band, but they were coming through just in a small compact car and staying on my couch and stuff and playing shows. So yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, we got a lot of great people in there, like Batmobile played there. Bratmobile, sorry, not Batmobile. Yeah. You know what I meant. Mo Tucker from Velvet Underground ended up playing there, which is kind of crazy, and yeah, it's a pretty cool time.
How long did that last for?
We went for about 2 years, and then we got sort of priced out. We were on a month-to-month thing, so like every 4 or 5 months, as we were getting successful and actually sustaining it, the landlords would crank up the rent, and we just were kind of clueless as to how to navigate those waters. So they priced us out. Fortunately, at that time, somehow the city's development corporation, I owned a small print and design shop, and I had started working with this development agency, and they owned a bunch of buildings downtown that they were trying to get developers to buy, and they let us take over this other space, which was like massive. It was like 2 warehouse fronts on a main street in the downtown, and so we went from a capacity of like 50 to like 400 like overnight, and we dubbed that space Secret Theater. Did a lot of shows there as well, and a lot of the Elephant Six people came through. Sufjan Stevens came through, Danielson, Cat Power. I mean, some locals like Butterflies of Love would play there, and so yeah, pretty cool time. That second space lasted about 2 years as well, so it was a good run for indie spaces,
Yeah. And so you mentioned the press, is it Hozomine?
Hozomine Press, yeah. That's actually, the business was called Color Outpost, but yeah, Hozomine was kind of like, we had a collective of artists in Mystic. There's a lot of poetry going on. There was poetry readings at one of the clubs that also hosted live shows, and at some point there was just enough material that we started putting out journals. The first one was called Mason's Stoop, and they always included artwork and as well as poetry and some prose, and it created a pretty big scene around that, and it led to us putting out books of poetry as well, which we, mostly was coming from within our group. But as the press got sort of a notoriety for itself, we were picking up poets from Providence and New York and Boston, and
Lee Ronaldo.
Yeah, ultimately we ended up working with Lee Ronaldo,
and of course the temporary autonomous zone brings to mind Hakeem Bey.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what it was named after. Lee we met at Real Artways. We went to they played a show up there, and it was, I don't know if Lee was playing as a headliner. I know Thurston did solo stuff from like that Psychic Hearts record. I think that had just come out, or it was around that time frame, and I think Faust was playing that show. And we met Lee, and we knew that he was into poetry as well, and we started talking to him, and he said we were doing this thing, and he said, well, actually I have this book I'm working on, so maybe we should talk, and it ended up working with him for 5 or 6 months, like getting the design of the book. Was he had a piece called Bookstore in it that was sort of text intermingling with photos by Leah Singer, his partner. So yeah, I got to work with him a bunch, and cool timing for that was the Sonic Youth got tapped for Lollapalooza at that point, so that book actually went out on the Lollapalooza tour. They had a little bookstore there with like independent press stuff, and so that got us out there far and wide, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Hakeem Bey, we actually I don't know how we found our way to him, but somebody had come through the club and knew him, and we were doing a compilation of bands who had played at Taz, and I just thought I'd ask, can we get him on there? And he recorded a couple of the pieces from that book that are included on the CDs that we put out. So pretty cool. He did I left it. I hid it at the end of the disc, but he made I got the tapes of him reading these pieces, and at the end of it, the tape was still rolling, and he's like, "These people are from Connecticut. How do they survive?" or something like that. Like, it was just like total diss on Connecticut, but it was pretty cool. So yeah.
And so that press sort of was you had a couple different labels before ultimately Telegraph formed.
Sure.
Sort of as an extension of the press, or with just as...
Yeah, I mean, I just, they're you always put a label on something. It's just another level of the package. It's fun. It's, so, we've gone through iterations over the years. I mean, there's Pop Rocket Records, and I can't even remember all of them, but I did a lot of compilations for a long time, so I was always releasing stuff, especially because I worked at the print shop, so I was the guy who would make the covers and help people. Back then, it was a lot of cassettes coming out. It was just the easiest thing for most people to do, and CDs hadn't hit yet. But I found myself staying in that role for a long time, so got to help a lot of people like put their music out. And that's really the label is sort of me just sort of putting on that hat and helping people navigate those waters, and depending on the product that they're trying to get done. But yeah, it was when we did the Tea at the Plaza Hoon was the compilation that we did for the Taz groups, and it was sort of box set, 2 CD, and there was like a book in there with like flyers and pictures and stuff from it, and that came out on Cosmodemonic Telegraph, which was a Henry Miller reference. I just figured if I'm going to, Cosmodemonic Telegraph was the man that he was working for, when he was living in New York, and so I just thought it was fitting that, well, this was like, somebody's got to do this work, so Cosmodemonic Telegraph. But that was cumbersome, and people misunderstood it. I mean, are we Satan worshipers or whatever?
Yeah, it's not a reference that
I actually,
everyone...
Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody, and it's a mouthful. And back when CMJ was the thing, instead of South by Southwest, we had gotten a showcase at one of the clubs, and the club owner called me, and he's like, I really can't have you putting Cosmodemonic Telegraph. It was like Giuliani era, and he just, it was like, you know, this is, he literally said, I can't have you putting your label name on this. You can put your bands, but it's just, it's pushing it with the climate down here right now. So that was like one of the first signs that we had to like maybe move on. So
what year do you think that was?
Yeah, geez. 2003? I don't know. I'm so bad with years, but yeah. So yeah. When we went to open the shop, it was a natural time to just sort of condense it down to Telegraph and keep it a little easier. So we did that.
And so yeah, when did the shop open?
Shop opened 8.5 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that. 2010. So yeah.
Good time.
Good time. Right after the, you know, great crash, nobody was lending money, and, you know, I had to do it all, like, with credit cards and savings and all of that, and willpower, you know, so, but we needed a store, and I also was running a nonprofit, and still am, but it's called New London Music Festival, and that was sort of taking over our lives, so just like tons of paperwork and grant reports and all of the stuff for that, and we needed office space, which is how I identified the space, and the landlord wanted to rent to me, but he really wanted a storefront, and I had the label and had already sort of done some selling through the other spaces that I run, and like I said, we really needed a record store, so I just sort of went for it. And so for a long time, the store was like half office space, and front end was just sort of a record store. Now all of the nonprofit stuff is back at my house, filling up my life, and there's no room for the records anymore. But the record store creep is fully set in and filled that space up. So.
Yeah, what's the word?
Yeah, we used to have a basement.
Right.
We used to have offices, a back room, basement, like that was
luxurious.
All. Yeah. Not anymore.
Records. We got records
everywhere.
Yeah, we got a stupid amount. But yeah, so at this point, how many hats are you wearing? Because like anytime I talk to someone, I have only a few New London friends, and whenever I talk to them, I ask what's up with the store, and they always say you're doing this, you're doing that. I've heard you were running a gallery. You're bartending sometimes. You just mentioned off mic that you're running a jazz club.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's going on?
I don't know. I have identity crisis. I don't know. I can't make ends meet. I don't know. I've just always been one of these guys that just does a lot. I just sort of, that's how I sort of keep going and sustain. So it's probably too much for any one person, but
it sounds it.
Sometimes I feel like I get better work done when I have like more balls in the air and I'm juggling, and if I'm too focused on one thing, it just doesn't kind of get there as well. I don't know. That's just my weird quirkiness, but yeah, I mean, I manage Side Door Jazz, which is down in Old Lyme, at the Old Lyme Inn. I do all the booking and promotions there. It's sort of a full-time gig disguised as a part-time gig. It's just 2 nights a week, so it's not like it's, I'm not booking 7 days a week, but it's a lot of work.
But you have to do office stuff for that.
Right,
the rest of the time,
it's contracts and the PR stuff, but fortunately all of my work now is really music related. I'm at the store, and the nonprofit is really pared down. We don't do I Am Festival anymore. We did that for a long time, and that was a much bigger thing, and now we do sort of a smaller series of concerts throughout the summer, and those are on Thursday nights, so I can fit that in with the Friday and Saturday Jazz Club. The only problem is, as I was mentioning earlier, is I can't do as many shows at the store as I'd like to. But I don't know. It somehow works.
But I mean, you sort of did work it in, since you were doing an afternoon series. So for shows, which I mean, for pretty much any other store, afternoon in the middle of the week, that's like unheard of to have bands play. Yeah,
well, that worked out. It was something that the local newspaper started. The Day started this thing called Live Lunch Break, and they were doing it in their office, which was just not conducive to it. It was like just a dead space. They had no audience. There was no atmosphere, and the bands would play and the songs would stop, and it just it was awkward. And so at that point, I was running running Hygienic Art, which is right across the street from the store. It's a sort of multidiscipline art space, and there was an outdoor facility there called the Art Park. And I said, we should really be doing this here. There's, place for people to be. We could sell beer during the day, get a hot dog guy in there or something. And so they came over, and it worked so well that we just sort of kept it going into the off months, into the winter, and they came into the shop, and it stayed at the shop for a long time. And it was a perfect fit because Thursdays are not a very busy day for us, and it did drive some people in, and it's great advertising for us. I mean, it gives a nice visual of the shop, and the stuff is posted on the interwebs and out there for people to view, and the bands were promoting it because they were psyched with the process. So yeah, that was a great thing, and hopefully we're going to start that up. The guy who does the video work has been getting a master's degree or something, and I'm hoping to do some more of that in the spring. So
I think that the area that you're in has sort of really, it's really come around. Like when I was a kid, I'd go there for the LNG, from 98 and 99 era until, when it closed. And I just remember that area not having anything besides bars and one pizza place. And that's all I remember was like if I had to go to the bathroom, I had to go to the pizza place. But now it's like a walkable area, so it's nice. You can get a nice lunch. You could walk to the record store. You could walk to the antique stores. There's a couple of them now around the block from you. Well,
sadly, the big antique store closed.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, that just happened recently. I mean, the good thing is it was purchased by a developer who's actually redeveloping properties. Our biggest problem in New London has been people purchasing stuff and then just sitting on it waiting to make their money. And this guy is actually turning buildings over, getting retail in, which is amazing. And that's been the biggest thing that we've been missing is retail down there.
So you think that's what it's going to be? It's going to be a retail store?
I mean, I think ultimately it'll be some combo of housing and that. But he's he had purchased buildings just to the right of that, and there hadn't been any retail in those at all, and there's like 4 spots that are active right now, and that really changes the paradigm down there because it was all bars. And, I mean, which was great. We were known for that scene, and it was it's a great nightlife community, but during the day there's nothing.
You're in that daytime business.
And I mean, even now there's not a lot of us, so it's hard to get serious foot traffic going, but we're gaining on it all the time. It's one of those things where there's this potential energy, and it's always been there. And I think it because I've been there so long, it's hard to recognize sometimes. But I think it's actually manifesting itself now, and so we're hopeful. I mean, there's the National Coast Guard Museum is supposed to go in down on the waterfront, and if that ever does come to fruition, I mean, it was going to be 2016, then 2018. I think we're off into 2020, 22 or something. But if it comes, that's going to really change the number of the foot traffic in the town, and it could really bring a lot more retail with it and get us over the hump. But a lot of potential energy. It's a very cool city. It's amazing architecture. Cool being right on that big river there. You're looking out at EB, and submarines are coming out of this building, and it's pretty neat. It's I really like it there. So.
And you're right around the block from Sarge's, which is probably the best comic book store in the state.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's an incredible space, and And
they let some pretty collectible stuff go for pretty cheap. It's nice the way they have it set up.
Yeah. We get a lot of people who are coming for both of our shops, and it works symbiotically together. So it's nice.
You're right around the block.
Yeah.
Definitely walking distance. But you're still releasing stuff like the whole time.
Yeah. A little less now. We had a real. New London's gone through a little bit of where it's how the sine wave goes with scenes. We're in a bit of a lull right now compared to some of the times that I've been active, but there's still stuff coming out. I mean, the Hempsteadies just released a new record this past year. The Horns of Ormus, an incredible punk rock band that's got roots to the earliest days of the punk rock scene in New London put out something with us, and that's an incredible record. This young guy Brad Bensko just put out a really great. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a pop rock record. It's in the Kinks tradition, like with good harmonies and just really well crafted record, really smart songs. So we did that. Pocket Vinyl continues to release stuff almost on an annual basis, and so yeah, I mean there's still stuff happening there. The scene is definitely changing right now. So but there are a few young bands popping up, and that's the first time in a few years. So feeling hopeful that the next phase is coming, the next wave, you know.
What are the names of some of those?
One great band, Tranquil Dirtbags, is they're sort of like there's a punky, they've got a distorted ukulele out front and a guy and girl vocals, but really fun and edgy too at the same time. Another group, Slept, they've got sort of a pavement-y kind of indie rock vibe. I'm going to draw a blank on others right now, but
it's cool.
But yeah, I mean, just even having two that I can name is good, because I think, you know, over the last few years there really hasn't been anything new popping up, and it's been a little bit of a concern because there's always been sort of this lineage that goes back to the earliest punk days in New London, you know, back to the Reducers and the early Towers of New London Records and all of that, and felt like we were kind of losing that train of thought, but I feel like it's still there despite that. So I'm feeling hopeful right now for the coming year. So
where are bands playing down there now?
33 Golden is one of the main rooms. Oasis Pub still does stuff, but it's a little less often, though it seems like Sean's ticking it back up again. So they've been going in waves. They also, that whole crew that opened Oasis, opened a new space called The Social, which is a full-on restaurant, but also a craft beer bar. They have like 50 taps, and but Sean's also been doing music there now, stuff like the West End Blend type groups out of the Hartford area, and maybe a little more towards the jam bandy stuff. And they also do something with the New London Big Band, which is pretty amazing. It's I'm not sure how many people are in the band. It's anywhere from like 15 to 25 on a given night, but it's a classic like Glenn Miller like big band.
Wow.
Which, like, how often do you get to see that stuff live? And they do a regular like once a month show there, which is pretty cool. It's worth the trip down there. I think it's on a Wednesday towards the end of the month usually, but so yeah, that's kind of the venues right now. There's not a lot. Right Path Organic has been having some like acoustic stuff, some jazz stuff, and there's a new space that's actually in the old L&G Club called RD86 that is starting to host music as well. They've got a jazz night, but they're also starting to bring in some more ethnic music and stuff from outside of the area.
Okay. I thought that building had been like redesigned on the inside.
Well, they put a wall up, so it is, but the old bar is still there.
Oh, okay.
But it's like the room is sort of cut in half, and the back half I think is like a teaching kitchen area. I think that's the concept of the place, is that, you know, they go in and they give seminars on how to do stuff in the culinary arts. I'm not really sure. I'm not super involved, but they're also just a restaurant now too, and getting pretty rave reviews. But the guy Robert, who's sort of leading the way with that, is also came out of the music scene down in New York and Brooklyn, and is trying to see if he can bring some of that back up. So that's hopeful. I mean, if he starts putting on events in that space again, it'd be kind of nice. I don't think they're going to be the shows that were there of lore, but you know. But yeah, it was a sad loss to lose the G. I mean, that's like, it was such an icon for so long. But
yeah, I mean, for there was a long stretch of time where that was like the biggest small place to have shows.
Right.
Like if you had a band coming through that needed to play to like 400 people, like
right, that's
the spot.
room. Yeah.
And there wasn't much else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real shame. I mean, it's a lot of history there, and you know, the guy who owns the building, sort of, he went sober, which is great, but he didn't really want to have that kind of environment in his building anymore, and so he, you know, kind of let the music hall idea just go away. So it's a shame, but it may come back again. You never know.
Okay. I like the last incarnation of the what was the it was the LNG, then it changed its name to something else, and then it was the LNG again. Club Hypnotic.
Oh, Club Hypnotic. Yeah.
And they built like fake balconies.
Right.
So then like the pit area was like flanked by walls.
That's right.
But then you didn't have to be in the pit area. You could be on these little fake balconies.
Right.
Which I liked.
Yep.
Yeah. So I Am Festival.
Yes.
Talk about that. So you got involved with that through this nonprofit.
Yeah.
And that ran the festivals. I realized you just said the nonprofit's still going and you're doing smaller shows.
Yeah.
How many years did you do the fest?
The fest was, I think, we didn't do the 10th one. I think we did 9. Maybe we did 10. I don't know. It's a blur. Yeah, I think, I think it started in 2004 and went up to 14, somewhere around there. But yeah, this woman in town, a developer, she's not in town anymore, but she had gone to Newport Folk Fest and said, this is perfect for New London, because we had the fort there that had just been redone, and so she did all this legwork to start this nonprofit in hopes of raising money to have a big outdoor festival. Yeah. And she did these smaller concerts in town and just wasn't getting any traction, mainly because she wasn't really booking the right people or talking to anybody in the music community that could help her get people behind her thing. And one of her last show, she asked my band Low Beam to play, and we played the show to like nobody in this big room. And I mean, it wasn't just us. There was 2 other bands, and it was just one of these weird shows where like you're not even sure why you're there and who knows about this. You go into this. It was a beautiful room. It's an old ballroom, but there was no advertising. And it was very strange. And she's sitting there just shaking her head, and she's like, "I'm done with this, Rich. I can't do this anymore." And I said jokingly, I was like, "Well, can I have the nonprofit?" And she kind of said, "Well, yeah, here." And so she had done all of the legal work and all of that. All I had to do was just sort of step in and write a grant. And so I did, and I got the grant, and it led to a small series of shows at Hygienic Art, which sort of led to me taking that over at some point. I had been on the board there previously, but they had this outdoor facility, and long story. But
has New London always been supportive? Like this, has the town always been supportive for it?
Generally speaking, I mean, there's this thing called Hygienic Art, which is happening this weekend, which led to the facility, but it was a art show. The Hygienic used to be a restaurant, it's like a Greasy Spoon Diner. It's open 24 hours, and everybody hung out there. And at some point in '79, a group of artists got a grant to do to bring their art to spaces that normally wouldn't see their art. So they did this show in this diner, and it took off. It ended up being this annual thing. Like any artist could put in one piece. There was no judge, no jury, no fee. You just show up and you hang a piece, and it hangs for the night, and that's the art show. And that turned into this annual tradition. So the art scene has its roots in that. I'm sure there was more art than that going on, but that is like been this thoroughfare since then, and it led to saving that building and turning it into an artist cooperative, and there's artist galleries there. At the same time, that's about when the early punk scene in New London started. Guys in the Reducers were in high school, and they went over to England, and they ended up seeing the Jam over there, and they came back and started bands, and that led to a very pretty significant scene. That's those Reducers records, you'd travel around the country and you'd see them in bins all across the country. And I mean, they had their moment where they could have sort of kept going with that. And but yeah, so I mean, to get back to, I mean, the arts and music have always been integral to the identity of the city, and I think the city politicians are all, it's such a small place too. I mean, New London is a mile long by less than that. I mean, 6 miles long by a mile wide. So it's it couldn't be any smaller.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a pretty dense community of people. Everybody knows each other, you know. So the politicians were just as much into the arts and music as everybody else was. And so that's all, you know, so that's
We've
a good
never
thing.
had that here. We're in the Footloose town. They hate music
really?
here. Yeah,
That's a shame. Yeah, I can't say that. I mean, we're lucky.
There was one time we wanted to have an acoustic guy, like just a dude with an acoustic guitar, play at the gazebo, and they did not want that to happen.
That's crazy.
Ultimately, we had it.
Yeah.
It was fine.
We just didn't.
It's just like the most modest thing we could possibly do.
Right.
And it's just like, nope, no music.
Right.
We don't allow bands on our parks or whatever. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Wonder what that is. That's
I don't know. But, bars also have to close at what, like 10 o'clock on Sundays or something?
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of
there's a lot of weird rules in this town.
They've always hated music in this town. I'll be totally honest. We've had...
Well, good for you for bucking it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a weird dichotomy in this town because there's this long tradition of, punk in all the rental halls, and then there's the Oakdale.
Yeah,
right.
But the town, like...
Trod Nozzle. All these things.
Trod Nozzle's here. Okay. I never knew where Trod was.
Yeah, it's like half a mile that way.
All right.
Yeah.
A lot of history in that place.
A lot of history in that place, yeah. But the town, not so much.
Hates music.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to get into it. But that's cool. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. So this series that we started, this thing, I mean, it's an innocuous name, but it's called Downtown Live. It's the series we did last summer, and the mayor was at every one of those shows, and he's like, how can we do more of these? So it's a positive kind of support that I guess I should feel fortunate for.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So store stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about the store. What are you stocking? What do you see as your focus?
Focus? I don't know what the word focus means. I work how many jobs?
I think we've
yeah.
Don't you get? I have no.
Yeah.
I have to say I kind of been winging it a little bit. I mean, obviously we've hit our. We're still at it 8 years later, and now it's got a certain rhythm to it. But initially,
that's more what I mean. Everybody finds their place in a way, especially if you're in 8 years. So. Yeah.
So I mean, down there, I think we're sort of similar. We try to bring people new stuff. It's not just used. Nobody down there was doing that. There's Mystic Disc and Tumbleweeds down there, and they're decidedly used.
Yeah.
I think both of them are getting into it now because you have to, and. You want to drive people in with having that stuff available. You don't want to say no. But that was always my main thing, was making sure that we were getting recent releases out to people and having people be able to find those. But I also didn't want to be niche in any way. It took me a long time to get there, but I was pretty, when I was young, I liked, Sonic Youth and Echo and the Bunnymen and New Order and the Smiths and XTC. But if you got outside of that box, like the Shaw, I mean, anything like Grateful Dead or, Dylan or, I just ignored whole swatches of culture that I just poo-pooed away because they weren't part of my thing, and I
did the exact same thing.
And I'm not that anymore, and I'm thankful for it. And so now I try to have everything, and it's cool because I'm learning every day in the shop, and that's my favorite part of it. I think is actually getting turned on to stuff that I never would have listened to before, and that's my main goal, and my hope for anybody coming in the shop is that they're going to find something that they might not have found before. But it's also, I think, a lot of what we do is really just being a community space. It's not about, I'm not the greatest businessman in the world. I haven't figured out that conundrum, how to make a living at this thing, really, which is why I'm having to work other jobs. And maybe if I were more focused in on this, maybe, who knows? But the main goal is to have a space where people can come in, and that plays into why we have shows, and we have poetry readings, and we do screenings every so often, and I try to have activity along those lines, which sort of help bring the community together.
Yeah.
So that's as much the focus is selling the stuff, but I also just I love the discovery, and right now our rap and hip hop and metal had all been very lacking for like the first bunch of years. So the last year or two, I've been really trying to build out those collections, which is sometimes easier said than done. I mean, certainly there's not a lot of used in either of those coming in. Every so often you get like a blessing of a collection that boosts it up. But so yeah, I've been focusing on that. I think we have a pretty strong jazz collection, and I certainly have more of an eye towards that now because of my connection with the jazz club. So I've been building that as well. But yeah, I think ultimately I'm just trying to keep it all enough opportunity in each section for anybody to find something. You know?
A lot of people have walked out of your store and then told me gone on about your reggae section.
Yeah, we got 2 collections in that, again, they're gift collections. I don't know if there's a word for that in record store lingo, but, it's just this, here's this thing, and, you open it up and it's like the case in Pulp Fiction or something. But this one guy, the first collection that came in, his grandparents had... I think the story is that they met in Jamaica. They were both there just on vacation as young adults, and they met there and fell in love, and so they went back every year, and they would bring back stuff with them. And so this collection was, some of it was impossible to price because it was not even on Discogs, these pressings straight from Jamaica. And so yeah, it was, it's sad because it's starting to sort of diminish a little, and I don't see another collection like that coming in. The second collection was a long-time reggae DJ who'd been part of the, there'd been a very significant reggae scene in New London for a long time. Not sure when it broke apart, but when I was young, I remember going over to New London, and they'd have Tuesday was reggae night, and there'd be reggae in all of these different spots around town, and again, I don't know when that sort of broke apart, but he was part of that whole scene, and so he brought in this whole other collection. But yeah, that's a good, strong part of the store for sure.
But that's great. We hardly ever see good reggae collections. It's hard around here. I mean, we see more country records than we do anything else for collections coming in. I think because of the Oakdale, because the Oakdale had such a strong country circuit thing to it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's always on the lookout for those special finds. Those special finds.
We've had some collections.
I don't know if there's a keyword for that.
There should be, though. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, we've had several collections over time where you've you name the collection the store staff knows the name of a collection, or we have a code word for a collection.
Right.
We have the KT collection, which was a mind-blowing metal collection that we'll never see again.
Right. Which we got in our first year of business, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
To think back on it now, it's if we had that now, what we could do with that now,
right, yeah.
But it was great to have at the time. Yeah. And
I don't even know how many LPs that
we had a jazz collection a couple years ago that was amazing, from a guy who owned a store in was it upstate New York.
We just bought a collection maybe 2 months ago from another store that had closed in what year did he say he closed? 86? 77 to 86.
Early to mid 80s, yeah.
Yeah, so we bought the owner of the store's personal collection, and that was really cool to see.
Incredible, yeah.
He had good stories.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, collections.
Yeah, bring them by.
Bring them by.
Come on down.
Couple stores looking for your collections right now.
Come on down.
Hey, everybody watch that Tidying Up show?
I watched 2 episodes of that last night.
I haven't watched any of it. I just know that
I know it's a thing.
Yeah, I know it's a thing, and that there's a lot of funny clickbait articles going around about now's the time to go to thrift stores because of that show. Right, yeah. So yeah. What else we got?
I don't know. What do you got?
You got anything, Rich?
Got anything?
What else you got going on
that
we don't know about?
Let's talk. I mean, what do you? Can you tell us more about the jazz club that you're booking? Who have you booked?
It's actually a pretty amazing space. It's if people don't know, it's called the Side Door Jazz Club. It's at the Old Lyme Inn. Shows are on Fridays and Saturdays exclusively, except for when they're not. But every so often there's something. But it really is like the best of the best that you might see at the Village Vanguard or Blue Note or any of the bigger clubs around the country or down in New York. In fact, one of the artists that was just set on stage that it really has become an extension of the New York scene. That it's really that's the way the booking's going. So. But we get a lot of the old cats, like people like Benny Golson, Freddie Cole, Lee Konitz, Dave Liebman, Lenny White, people who were on seminal records playing, besides Miles on Kind of Blue. Jimmy Cobb has played the club.
And you're getting good turnouts for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a small room. The capacity is 68 seats, so it's a very intimate space. It's a wide space. The stage is on the side of one of the long walls, and so you're never more than 10 or 15 feet from the band. It's sort of like they're playing in your living room.
Do you do those as ticketed events?
Yep, they're ticketed events, usually on sale, 6 to 8 weeks out, and price range is like $35 to $45, unless it's a bigger name that we might go a little higher. Like Christian McBride played recently, and it's if you're into jazz, I mean, it's we don't get too out there. It's a little more traditional. It's I think Firehouse 12 sort of does more experiment and pushing the envelope kind of stuff than what we do, but anybody who's even peripherally into jazz, it's a pretty unique room, and it's here in Connecticut, so you're not driving down to New York having to take a train and or stay the night or whatever. So there's some real benefits to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we also do we do 2 sets per night with the same audience. So unlike New York, where you usually get like a 45-50 minute set and they kind of kick you out, and unless it's the last set of the night and they're extending things out a little longer, you're actually getting 2 full sets with the band, and the band is hanging out there. And so I think the musicians really dig it because it's a little more relaxed for them, and oftentimes they're staying at the inn, so they're just in a different state of mind, and it lends itself to some very special performances. So I feel really fortunate. I mean, I'm like just meeting some incredible people who have been on some of the most important records out there, and hearing the stories is absolutely incredible. I wouldn't trade that for the world. It's pretty neat.
That sounds like a very unique setup.
Yeah, it's and that came out of me doing stuff like I Am Festival. The guy who owns it was an early supporter of that nonprofit and had seen what we'd done with those festivals and other events, and when he needed somebody the last manager left and he didn't know what to do, and he came and tapped me on the shoulder. It wasn't something that I thought, I'm going to manage a jazz club, because it's not, it's not my wheelhouse. I mean, I'm a little more rock and roll than that, but I, as I mentioned earlier,
family background.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always had a taste for jazz. It wasn't what I listened to, Coltrane and Mingus and Miles Davis and Billie Holiday, and I mean, I had those bigger names in my head always, but now I'm in it, so it's like,
where can people see the calendar so they know what you have
the sidedoorjazz.com.
Okay.
Yeah. So and there's always great stuff, and really, if somebody's on our calendar, we're not rolling the dice very often. It's already been, they've earned the privilege to be there or whatever. So even if it's not a name you recognize, you're going to get an incredible night of music. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's even if you're not sure about jazz, it's such a great room to just go and experience what jazz can do. It's a different way of listening. It's like, you know, just the fact that you're engaging the artist while the song is going on as much as you are afterwards. A lot of music, you're sort of, you wait and then, you know, show your appreciation after the fact. But jazz, you're engaging the music constantly, and that back and forth is really alive in our room. And so I think just on that level, even if you're just curious, it's worth trying to go and experience it, you know.
So, but I know you said you're having less bands play in the store, but
except this weekend.
except for the weekend that we're recording
right.
this. Do you have anyone coming up through the month of February?
Pocket Vinyl is coming in. Pocket Vinyl is doing this crazy thing where they are going for the world record of, and this is working through Guinness Book of World Records. They've confirmed that this will do it. Of playing in the most states in the shortest period of time or something. And there's some redundancy to the states, like they're allowed to double back if they've gone far enough away. So they're doing this crazy tour that starts at the Telegraph on, I think it's, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think it's February 22nd. You can dub in the right date right now. And then they work their way around all these states, and they'll hit 50 states in 40 days or something like that. And I mean, it's I don't. It's crazy, but so that's the only thing I have in February. Other than that, like I said, I'm not really booking a lot right now. So yeah, unfortunately, the big stuff is this weekend.
So they kick off at the store.
Yeah,
or do they
yeah. So they're kicking off at the store. So
okay.
I think they're going to play either 33 or Oasis when they get back. But yeah, so yeah, we'll launch them off, and it's like an 11 o'clock show, like those other shows, the live lunch break stuff we were doing, and then they'll drive up to Providence, I think, or some, you know, they're going to do 2 or 3 in that first day.
Yeah, while you still have the energy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
that's wild. So, do they have to take a Guinness person with them?
I think they just have to document, but I think they have to. I mean, Guinness has to certify it, so they had to make sure that it's like, you know.
I'm sure it has to be heavily documented in some way.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So that's just beyond my pay grade on this one, but
that's fun. It's like thinking about 40 days on the road, like trying to do multiple states within that is insane to me.
It's insane. Yeah,
like even to get the clubs to line up.
Just being 40 days on the road is exhausting.
That's insane
just
enough,
thinking about it. Like,
exactly.
Like, so yeah, the cut up we haven't talked about yet, and that's sort of an extension of what you were doing.
Yeah, sadly it's not going right now. It was a newspaper dedicated to music and the arts, and just trying to have like a
free paper. I don't know.
It was a free paper, yeah, sort of focused on Connecticut, but trying to bring Rhode Island and maybe some of southern Massachusetts into it. And I don't know. I still believe in. I mean, I own a record shop like you guys. I believe in the physical. Like, I believe in having something that you can hand to somebody and say, "Hey, did you see this?" I think we rely too much on the digital, and I don't think it's a good thing, because, you know, who knows? I mean, solar flares, the Russians, who knows what's going to happen, but I don't think it's always going to be there. And more importantly, are we leaving any kind of legacy behind, or anything that can be passed on? Because it's all just, you know, you're just swiping away and then it's gone. And so I'd always had this sort of conceit of doing a newspaper for those reasons, and I just like the format. I like feeling it in your hands, and and it went very well. It was just hard to maintain. I just too busy to go out and sell ads, and so it was really grant supported, with the exception of a handful of bigger ads that I was fortunate to get. I think the model still works, and depending on grants that I might get this year, we'll try to do them again. I think it'll be something that pops up periodically, and if there's money there, we'll do an issue. And if it's once a year, cool. If it's twice a year, or if it's more than that. But it was very well received. You know, people people were pitching in. It was hard to get momentum going though, because it was just quarterly, and every time was like rallying the troops, like, you know, do you have any content this time? Well, no, I'm writing for this other thing, you know. So that was always problematic. But I mean, I think there's enough in our artistic and music community here in this area to support it, and so I'm hopeful to maybe try and do it again. I think it was a good effort. You know, we got 5 of them out, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You know, yeah, give it the old college try. We'll see if it happens again. I don't know. You know, I'm waiting right now that the grants that usually support the stuff that I do in New London come out towards March. So I'm just sort of in the holding pattern until then to know what I'll be able to do with any monies that we do or don't get. So just sort of waiting right now. But yeah.
Yeah, that covers pretty much everything I had. What do you have any releases on the horizon? Putting stuff out?
I don't think I do right now. You know, I'm kind of waiting to see what the next.
Here's a question I had that we haven't really addressed, but you're very New London based. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about reaching beyond that, or is that sort of your mission?
I think yes. I mean, I in the last bunch of years, like in the last 4 or 5 years, I was trying to break out of that. I think for a while I was New London focused because I was trying to make a scene happen there, and that's when we were doing we sort of re-upped on the Towers of New London thing. We did 2 additional compilations there, and that was sort of this heyday period where the first one led to like this a lot more bands sort of engaging the scene, and to the point that, you know, there was like 34 bands on the second one that we put out, and so the scene got to this point where it was doing its thing, and I wanted to focus beyond that. So I started working with groups like Violent May and Quiet Giant or Loom as they were called initially, and Dr. Martino, and so trying to branch out from around the state, and so that's certainly been more of my focus over the last like 4 years or so. I mean, right now I'm just sort of in a limbo because I'm just like, you know, probably having the jazz club job. It's just too much to like. Unfortunately, I'm not in the music scene very often because of it. I can't, you know, it's every Friday and Saturday, so I'm not out at shows saying, "Hey, we should do a project. Let's do," you know. So I'm not really out there recruiting as much as I'd like to be. But yeah, I mean, I love helping people put music out. I love creating the product. I love helping design it and doing mixing, mastering, whatever it takes, and. So I'm sure that will have its next wave. But it's certainly, I don't think I would say that I'm New London focused anymore. I mean, if anything, right now I'd prefer to draw a bigger circle, and that's sort of what the Cut Up was trying to do too. Is say, well, New London, we're basing this in New London, but the idea is like, we're part of this bigger community of Southern New England, and so yeah, I think that's. Hopefully the focus from here on out is to expand the radius a little bit. But.
All right, cool. So, you want to tell folks where they can find you other than...
Well, there's a pitiful placeholder website, I think, out there, telegraphnl.com, but that's... I haven't been on that in 2 years, I don't think.
Oh, wow.
But
wow.
Yeah, I don't, the Facebook... Facebook is...
But all the information on it is
all the
correct.
information's there, but it's literally, I don't sell through that site. I mean, we're on Discogs, and we're on Facebook and Instagram, so those are the places, and it's Telegraph NL in most of those, so...
And of course, people can come visit you.
Yeah, that's even more fun. We're at 19 Golden Street, it's, right off Bank Street, and there's a municipal lot right there, so you can park easily, and plenty of bars and restaurants around to make a day of it. So, yeah, come on down.
Cool. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.